If you take offense or do not enjoy videos on Booktube with any political content whatsoever, you probably will not enjoy this one. I've been on Booktube 2 years, and I've posted a couple of response videos, and that's what this one is. Hi Booktube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. This video today is in response to a video that I watched entitled, Dear White People, Why Are We Afraid of Books? And this was a video that Brian at Bookish posted on his channel, Bookish. And I watched it and I felt moved to respond and add to Brian's conversation. It's an exceptional video. I of course am linking it below. I would encourage you to watch it if you're interested in this topic, if you want to learn more, if you want to hear Brian's opinion, and continue to watch my video if you'd like to hear what I had to add. The topic of the video is kind of a question or a call to white people, specifically based on recent elections in the state of Virginia. And white people, why are we afraid of books? Why are we attempting to ban books from schools? This also came up because of the book Beloved by Toni Morrison, that was attempting to be banned from a school based on its content, its violence, sexual content, sexual assault, racial content. And there was a parent that claimed her son was disturbed and offended and upset by the content in the book, so they were campaigning to have it removed from the school library. But why are we afraid of books like that in school libraries? I did a little bit of research, and I looked at a lot of banned book lists, and what I found was not surprising, but the vast majority of books banned in schools are banned based on either sex or race. And I looked at a list from, it is the American Library Association, ALA.org, the Banned and Challenged Books, and this is the top 10 most challenged books list. The very first one is George by Alex Gino, a book I read and loved. It's a lovely book based on a transgender child. So there's one about sex. Number 2 is Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism in You by Ibram X. Kendi and Jason Reynolds. There's 2 versions. This is an adult version and there's a young people's version of this book. What is this about? Racism and race. The definitive history of racist ideas in America. It's clear to those of us who are not surprised why this is banned in schools. When I look at the list very quickly, number 3, All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kelly. Profanity, drug use, and alcoholism, and it was thought to promote anti-police views. Number 4, Speak by Laurie Hall Anderson. It's a book about the rape of a teenage girl. Number 5, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. Sherman Alexie has become a problematic author. Number 6, Something Happened in Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice by Marianne Solano, Marietta Collins, and Ann Hazard. Number 7, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Number 8, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Number 9, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, another Toni Morrison book. Number 10, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I think at least 6 of these books are based on race, racism, race relations. Why are we afraid of children reading books with those themes in our schools? White people that are nervous about it, why are you? Why are you worried about kids reading these books, whether they're middle school age or high school age? I remember middle school, and my daughter just finished middle school a year ago. I think maybe one of the biggest reasons why white people, not all white people, that's a stereotype, why many white people who have been concerned about specific books in schools, why are they afraid? I think it's a dual answer for me. Number 1, there's a theory of innocence in childhood. We want to keep childhood pure and innocent and sheltered. We don't want children to be disturbed by hard discussions, by disturbing themes. So maybe part of it is we don't want our children to read things that we believe will get them upset. The other one is, as Brian discussed very well, we don't want to rock the boat of control that we believe we have. For me, as a white person in the United States, it's shamefully easy, and it always has been shamefully easy, to learn American history and to accept what was taught to us. There were so many gaps and missing information that as an adult, I look back and I know now. But as a student, I just accepted what was taught to me and what I read out of textbooks. And there's a lot of reasons that I could come up with as to why I wasn't taught some of the honest reality of our own American history. There wasn't enough time, too much content, the schools didn't have the proper books, the teachers didn't have the proper training, the teachers were simply giving us an overview of curriculum, so maybe all of that could be true. But what that does to white Americans is it teaches us a whitewashed version of history. It doesn't teach us anything about what African people went through in a substantive way. It doesn't discuss what African people endured being stolen from their homes and brought to the United States. It didn't discuss at any length the centuries of slavery and what that meant to an entire race of people. So at a very surface level, we learned about it, but there wasn't once any discussion about racism and how racism has thrived in the United States. It's a buzzword cliche at this point in the media, but CRT, critical race theory. Critical race theory is not a theory that is currently taught in American junior highs, middle schools, or high schools. It for many years was taught at a college or graduate level, as it should be taught in schools in general. Why are we so afraid of the theory of critical race theory? Again, because it seems to be we're having our control rocked. We are having our sense of control broken. Our naive view of our own white American history is being torn asunder, and we're panicking. So, again, I'm going to insert a disclaimer. I say we, or white people, and yes, I am grouping all of us together, but I am a white American, and that's the perspective that I have. So maybe that's why we don't see the evidence of racism all around us. For my book group in real life, we read the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo several months ago and had a very spirited discussion. And my book group is made up of all white women. We all live in the same general area in New England. We all live in a fairly suburban area. So that's our perspective. And so there was a lot of very different statements from each of us talking about, do we believe we've been brought up in a racist society? As white people, do we think we're racist? Have we experienced reverse racism, which is another cliche term that some Americans have railed against? We had a very interesting discussion about that. And the term white fragility speaks to exactly what I believe many fearful white people are feeling. They don't want to admit that they were brought up in a racist society. They don't want to admit that they've experienced any form of racist attitudes. They don't want to ever accept the label of racist. And they don't want to look out into their lives and into their daily worlds and see, yeah, this is a racist atmosphere. I think it's so difficult for people to admit to it. And maybe that's why white people, why are we afraid of books? Why are we afraid of a book like Beloved? Because it's upsetting, because it details sexual assault, because it details slavery, violence. Why are we afraid of a book like Stamped for our students to read in schools? Why wouldn't we want our students to learn the honest history of our country? Because we're so used to accepting white savior, white heroes, white governmental history, white male governmental history. And as Brian said in his video, all history is revisionist history. Revisionist history is us looking back now and trying to write the reality, to write the honest accounts of how our country came to be America. I wanted to talk about literacy, because when we talk about white people, why are we afraid of books? We're a country that doesn't really read. We consume our information online or digitally or from the news media. We don't typically go out and search out information on our own. I have a few quick statistics. 43 million Americans in the United States have low literacy skills. From the ages of 15 to 44, people read 10 minutes or less any reading day. 27% of the U.S. population didn't read a book at all in the year 2018. 80% of teenagers don't read for pleasure. They get all of their information from social media. And the USA, out of 194 nations, ranks 125th for literacy. I think that's a good reason why we're afraid of books. Books will open up the truth. Books will open up reality. And books will show us and teach us information that maybe we've wanted to deny for generations. I wanted to show you some books that I have several books that I read that changed me, and that also taught me the things that I was missing from what I was taught in American history. These Truths by Jill Lepore. I read this in a year-long read-along hosted by Karen Evans, and I was so angered by the content, learning about the origins of the country and the origins of slavery in the United States. But I also realized what I was missing and what lacked in my own American history education. This book has changed me, and because of this book, I have searched out other books, and I'll show you those a little later. These two books, A Promised Land by Barack Obama, Volume 1 of his presidency, and his wife's book, Becoming by Michelle Obama. Both of these books are very optimistic, are very positive thinking, but they are also honest in their discussions about racism and what both of these two people experienced, Barack Obama as the president and Michelle Obama as the first lady. Both of them highly educated, going into law careers, and what they had to battle and what they had to fight and how they overcame a society of racism and how they thrived and succeeded. I just finished Isabel Wilkerson's Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. We have a caste system in the United States, and this is a book that I am sure many people who are afraid to read or afraid to open a book that might tell them something they don't want to hear or don't want to believe will be quite offended by this book because of our existing caste system in the United States. Because of the book, These Truths, I went out and looked at other books that I want to read. These are books on my TBR. This is The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism by Edward E. Baptist. I am eager to get to this book, and I hope to do it next year, early next year. We have to admit that the basis of our capitalist country was based on slavery and the free labor that we demanded from kidnapped people. The History of White People by Nell Irvin Painter. It's race theory and its inevitable partner, racism. I want to read this. I want to learn, and I want to know. I want the gaps to be filled in my own American history conversation. This one is extremely timely, unfortunately. Carol Anderson's One Person, No Vote, How Voter Suppression is Destroying Our Democracy. Anybody that goes back to look at the years 2016 to 2020 in American history will be unable to avoid the question of voter suppression. And this one, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. I don't believe that many American teenagers will know what Jim Crow is, and which is completely unfortunate, and it's a tragedy because we should not forget what happened after the years of the Civil War. I lost some friends because of several years ago, or a couple of years ago, when the Aunt Jemima syrup controversy happened in the media. The company that manufactured Aunt Jemima syrup was removing the logo of Aunt Jemima because it promotes racist ideology and the glorification of slavery. And there was so much discussion on Facebook in my friend circles about so many white people were pissed off that they were removing this logo. They couldn't understand what was so offensive about it. It didn't have anything to do with promoting racism and slavery. It was basically an American logo about our history, our country's history. It was a positive representation of a Black woman who made pancakes. And I lost several friends because of what I thought started off as discussions, but which became rageful, angry rants about the history of slavery, the history of the American Confederacy, people who I thought were friends who were unwilling to give up the idea of Confederacy being part of a positive aspect of American history. And in the discussion of the Confederacy began because of states fighting for their rights to own slaves, people stopped being friends with me. And there are some of them I do not miss and I haven't missed because I didn't want to be friends with people that stuck by those types of ideals. Why are we afraid for our children to learn the truth? Why are we afraid for our children to get honest information, either about race relations, race theory, racism, the tone of the country that we live in, American history? Instead of white American history, why are we not learning about African American history, Native American history? Oh, we learn about that too, but there are so many schools that still have representation icons and mascots that have to do with Indians. And when schools' mascots have been changed, parents have rebelled. When statues of Confederate leaders have been removed, people have rebelled. It's, I don't even know, I don't like to think of what's coming in our political future, because the state of Virginia just elected a conservative government official after voting Joe Biden into office. So what are the repercussions of a Trump presidency and now a Biden presidency and Virginia elections? It's difficult for me to think about that. I will continue to encourage my child and my children to learn the true accounts of their history of this country, of how this country was formed and how it's been maintained, political history and civics. And for that matter, I'm going to continue to encourage my daughter to learn about sex and reproduction in schools, and I will always and honestly add to those discussions. A little bit off track. This is not part of the discussion that Brian opened, but very recently in the last few days, I read a story in the news of a town in York, Maine, which is right over the border from me. And there is a book called It's Perfectly Normal, a book about changing bodies, growing up, sex, and sexual health by Robbie H. Harris. There was a community member in York, Maine, who was campaigning to remove that book from middle schools, from the York Middle School, I believe the library. And this person who was campaigning to remove the book not only did not read the book, but does not have a child who attends the school. And when I look at books that have to deal with American history, racism, or sexual health, quite often that's the case. It's a person that has looked at the catalog of books in the schools, seen what they believe is a controversial title, and demanded that book be removed. Sometimes I think the only way to combat those ideas is for people to read more, is for people to be open-minded and want to learn. Whether they agree with the things they're learning or not, at least they're getting multiple perspectives. So please watch Brian's video. What did he do before he retired? He taught history. Thanks for watching.